This is the Legacy Wealth Code podcast, helping you build long-term wealth and a lasting legacy through real estate investing, tax strategies, and motivational stories from some of the most successful and influential people out there. Here are your hosts, real estate investor and entrepreneur, Michael Notbaum, and real estate investor and attorney, Andrew Hook.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Legacy Wealth Code podcast. My name is Michael Notbaum. I'm here with my partner in crime, Andrew Hook.
Hey guys, how are you all?
We appreciate the couple-week hiatus that you guys have been patient on a new episode. Andrew, if you've listened to many of the other episodes, is fairly stoic and called me and said, I got a heart surgery tomorrow, and I thought, well, that seems like a kind of a big deal. So needless to say, he's had a couple weeks of healing, and we're back in action. And we actually today have a guest with us, Jim Sheils. He's a real estate expert with extensive knowledge in the build-to-rent niche. Also a partner at Southern Impression Homes, a company that specializes in building rental portfolios in Florida's high-growth markets for individual investors and institutional buyers. In addition, Jim is the co-owner and co-founder of 18 Summers, providing family education services to entrepreneurs and professionals seeking to strengthen their family relationships while succeeding in business. So, hey, thanks so much, Jim, for coming on. We're excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, Michael, Andrew, thanks for having me.
I guess we didn't share with you that our hiatus was due to Andrew nonchalantly having not one but two heart surgeries. So
wow,
we are
looking good today. So I'm glad to see.
Yeah.
You back on the show.
I'm definitely happy to be back on the other side of it all. So it's definitely good to be here.
And nothing makes us happier than talking about real estate. So here we are today. We've got an expert with us. One of the things I definitely wanted to chat with you about is escaping the rat race. Kind of just people want to get started in investing in real estate, and sometimes people think that they don't qualify. A lot of people just don't even frankly know where to start. So what is your kind of special sauce, so to speak, that's helped you both help yourself and others around you?
We just wrote a book called The Passive Income Playbook, and it's about my 25-year journey with my wife and my now building partner. And what I've found is a couple of things about real estate investing. That first property is probably not going to retire you. And if you're putting the pressure on to make it retire you, you're going to be disappointed. Now, and the good news is that first property is not going to bankrupt you probably either. There's that fear as well. But what I've learned really, 25 years in, real estate investing, there is a nurturing to it. There is a planting of the seed. You don't feed off a seed so much in the beginning. But if you start to really look at the most successful real estate investors, right? It's that saying, don't wait to buy real estate and wait.
Yeah.
When you can get into the right areas with the right fundamentals and you have some patience, that's when things can really start to kick into gear. And by kicking into gear, you're going to have better results. This is the biggest lesson, guys, that I've learned is I own way less numbers of properties today than I did, let's say, 10, 12 years ago. And right now I have way more equity and cash flow than I've ever had. So I always encourage people, don't get wrapped up in the number, the quantity. Get wrapped up in the quality. And if you have some patience, that's what I've seen work for the majority of the people like myself and many clients that I've worked with. That's been kind of the secret sauce. A little bit of patience, choosing quality over quantity, and looking long term. That is absolutely key. Not putting the pressure, I need to be retired off these 2 rentals in the next 12 months. That'd be nice, but it's not normally the norm. But I can tell you a lot can happen in 3 to 5 years with a few properties.
Jim, tell us a little bit about what led you into the build-to-rent sector. It sounds like you started potentially outside of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, Andrew, I was actually doing bulk foreclosures after 2008. I was buying foreclosures in bulk for myself, and investors were hiring me to work those properties. There was a great time at that post-2008 to buy properties cheap. I was in North Florida, which had a great growth pattern. But by about 2014, 15, the numbers really started to change. There was a lot of investors jumping in and put a lot of pressure on where if you're going to buy a property that needed rehab, you had to cut corners, or you had to go where he didn't want to. None of that's good. So my now building partner, we had done different properties together, and him and his father actually owned a management company. And I had hired and fired 4 property managers where I was in Northeast Florida, and came to them. They were doing a better job than I had on my own. And he said to me, hey, what if we threw in and we just built some houses, new construction rentals, instead of trying to find old fixer-uppers? And it was literally that organic. There was no term build to rent. That's only come along in the last 5 years. So we were doing build to rent way before the term even came. So it was really, Andrew, a necessity where we wanted to keep doing deals, not only for ourselves, but investors hired us, and we didn't think the fundamentals were still sound for the old fixer-uppers. They had been priced too high, you'd have to cut corners, and we wanted a better approach. And now, after doing thousands of the old properties versus thousands of new construction, there's no comparison. The numbers don't lie when it comes to performance, length of tenancy, maintenance, repairs, headaches, even value growth in rental and market appreciation. I hung up my rehab shoes about 7 years ago as we were transitioning. I don't see me picking them back up, guys.
I think Andrew is ready to move in with you. If you have your rehab shoes hung up, I can tell you we've had many conversations just dealing with local just kind of city garbage with the red tape and just the endless re-inspections on things that were fairly common sense items. It's like when you make that transition, I'm sure that is a game changer. So what would you tell, because the viewer base that we have and listener base is really a mixed bag of people who are seasoned investors, and then there's also those who are just getting into an investing. So new construction, build to rent, I think for a lot of people could sound intimidating. What are some of the things to worry about, and what's some of the things that, just this is the natural progression of how things go?
Yeah, again, I always ask my seasoned investor friends, and I'm in a lot of mastermind groups and I'm always at events learning still. I always ask that question about taking inventory of, would it be better to own less of better quality? Because there comes a point where a lot of us start in more marginal properties that had more repairs than we knew, and is that the best way to stay long term? And maybe some say yes, but a lot say no because they're trying to buy back their time. And I found that the new construction model, you can go into less properties, but I think get better results. And so that's something for seasoned people I always tell them to consider. And for newer people, you got to look at ROT, and that's return on time. A lot of the new people that we work with, for example, I'm not sure your listening base, but we have a lot of successful professionals and business owners, and they want to be involved in real estate, but they don't necessarily want to be in the trenches with it. They don't want to be negotiating with the contractors and subcontractors and learning the areas and figuring out their own financing. They want to be exposed to real estate, but not in. And that's where I tell people, look at the models that are going to be less demanding on your time. And that's that return on time. And that's something that, I think can't be discounted. And if you truly are looking long term, the condition of the property, no one wants to talk about this, but those older properties, there's some that are built well, others that are not. And if they're in areas where it's constant turnover, is that really going to create generational wealth? Are you really going to stay long term in those, another 20 years? It made me change a lot about myself, 10 years ago. And it could do the same for others. I'm not sure.
Hey, Jim, talk to us a little bit about the financing on the build to rent. I think most people that dabble in rehab know there's a ton of products for fix and flip loans. They're used to kind of seeing that. What do you typically see on the build to rent? Is financing more difficult? Are there a number of products that have rolled out? And especially as you said, you started kind of before it was an it thing. What does that look like over time?
Yeah, look, even for good builders out there with a good balance sheet right now, the banks kind of have them in handcuffs, and they're wanting everything pre-sold, so you have to usually sell it pre-construction, which, that's fine. I've done those, and we've done lots of those for our clients. I've bought them, but a lot of people don't want to wait 12 months for a property. And so that really holds the builders back. For us personally, a part of our business was acquired last year by Sumitomo Forestry. Now, Sumitomo is the big financial conglomerate of Japan. You know, they were broken up in World War II. Warren Buffett has invested very heavily in one of their other conglomerates, but they now back us. We have zero bank debt, which is very rare for a builder of our size, and they've given us the green light. So for our personal building, having this bigger partner now with part ownership of our company, they fund us completely, which is a pretty good thing. For other builder friends out there doing new construction, or even if you're building a single family home or smaller property, you know, you can get construction loans, but they're tedious and they're a lot of paperwork. For our buyers, you don't need one. So if you're buying a new property with us, we're on a continual build cycle. So someone can step into us and buy a home that's completed or within 60 days of completion. They don't need a construction loan. They just need permanent financing. And financing is the key out there right now. So a lot of builders actually come to us right now. They'll have a piece of land. They'll hire us to build because we actually can finance their project for them as part of what we have in our overall bankroll. Then we also now have bought money. So we pre-buy mortgages for our clients. So if someone's buying a duplex with us, let's say, we pre-buy money. It's not cheap, but it's worthwhile because where most people are getting locked in at 7.5%, we're locking our people in at 4.75 right now. So that's, you know, several. And if someone tried to do that on their own, they'd be paying their lender 10 points to do that. So that's financing is I don't know about what you guys are seeing, but that's the issue out there right now. We don't have a real estate issue. We have an interest rates and financing issue. And so we're always trying to solve those. And right now, with our building operation being fully funded by our parent company and us pre-buying mortgages for our investors, that's been a huge help to keeping us sustain a really good volume.
Well, you make a good point. So I guess my question along the line of what you're, you know, and I totally on board with you, what you're saying about financing. In fact, so we're in Tampa, and there's a number of projects that, you know, basically were announced, and now they're just kind of in a holding pattern until rates lower and they can move forward. And I think that there's just a level of uncertainty with everything right now, right? I mean, you turn on the news and one channel tells you one thing, another channel tells you the other thing. And so there's somewhat of a, I think, hesitation by a lot of investors. When you're doing new construction and there is a 12-month lead time, you know, obviously applying your 25 plus years of experience, like what else are you looking at to know I want to keep moving forward and I'm not going to be caught holding the bag 12 months from now?
Meaning if you're building it yourself?
Yeah, because so, I mean, well, your model is you're building it and then you're having investors buy it from you and then hold it. As you're building these, you have a certain amount of lead time and an expected exit price. What kind of metrics are you looking at to make sure you're not going to see a huge correction by the time you're done?
Yeah, look, if anyone tells you they're in the build to rent business and they're not concerned about values or what the rents are actually going to be, or is the rental demand still there, they're just not telling the truth. They're not really in the game. So we're constantly pulling market data on how many building permits are coming out, you know, how many new units are coming on the market. And we're in 12 different markets in Florida, but we're always looking how many units are coming out, how fast is absorption occurring, you know, what are the rental rates at? It's really a constant checks and balances, you know, constant research to always be trying to navigate that ahead. And the good news is, I think with the residential, it's a little bit easier. Residential just seems to be, at least where we are in Florida, we've had so much growth. Most of the areas that we build in are extremely behind in needed rental inventory, especially small residential. You know, the bigger commercials and apartment buildings, they're not I'm not seeing them as favorable as they were before the pandemic. People like to be spread out, have their own yard. They'll choose the half of a duplex before a unit in an apartment building almost every time. So that's super helpful for what we're doing. But we're constantly looking, Michael, to see, and also we don't like to take a lot of risk. So it's a very simple supply and demand. If we get like a report from the municipality, like Southwest Florida, Fort Myers we're down there, we're building in many of the submarkets of Fort Myers. Well, before the pandemic even started, they showed 3 years behind on needed rental inventory. So we like to have that wind at our back. And when you look at that, that helps you know, am I going to be holding the bag? Some people just start building and they're not even checking to see, well, how many permits are being pulled? You know, how much rental demand? How quick is absorption? Are prices staying steady? What type of inventory? So we don't just build single family. What separates us from some other builder rents is we also build duplexes and quads. So other residential investment real estate that shows really well in performance and value growth, and we know there's a need for those. So again, we're always trying to look at the need, and you know, stabilization can go from 5 days to 95 days now. But again, a real estate investor knows that stabilizing is just that upfront cost to get the property going, and then you start to get on your way.
Jim, it sounds like you guys stay 4 units or less. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, Andrew. We stay in the realm of residential. Now we'll hold quad communities for, you know, for some individual investors and even some family offices or hedge fund groups. But our bread and butter is individual single family duplexes and quads.
Do you find that across those, the single family, the duplex, and the quad, the demand is pretty similar, or do you get more demand on any one of those?
You know, they're all pretty similar in demand. The quads are an interesting kind of unicorn. You don't find them out that much. I mean, you guys are in real estate. How often do you find a quad coming up? You know, you can still get residential financing. They're usually older. They were, you know, back in the day, and even now, they can be very hard to get approved. And, you know, a lot of builders, like a lot of the national home builders, they're like, what do you build quads? You're nuts. I'm not going to waste my time with that. And they're too small for the commercial guys. So the quads are kind of a unicorn, and they also obviously give you the most amount of tenants under one roof for one loan. So all of them have a good demand, but definitely quads have an interesting look taken at them by a lot of investors and a lot of action too.
Okay. You mentioned you're in 12 markets in Florida. Do you have certain things that are you looking at future growth? Are you looking at existing growth? What are some of the things that are leading you into those? And then conversely, are there certain markets that you try to stay out of, and what's leading that?
Yeah, great question. So there's 5 factors to real estate growth. And I don't depend on appreciation, but I do my best to get in its way. That's always been my motto from a mentor taught me that over 20 years ago. And we always look for these 5 factors: economic growth, population growth, a good affordability index. This is super important because this, I think, determines where you're going to have cash flow or whether there's still room for growth. So if you're in a market where the average price of a home can be afforded by the average family income, that's good. That's a good score on the affordability index. You know, go outside to like a San Francisco. Holy cow, you're not even close. The average family income for a price of home, not even close. We still have great affordability indexes in our markets, you know, and they're desirable, and there's healthy supply and demand there. Those are our 5 factors: population growth, economic growth, affordability, desirability, healthy supply and demand. We look for all 5 of those, Andrew, and we got to have all 5. And that affordability index, that's really important because we're not in Miami, we're not in Orlando, we're not in Tampa. And I like all those markets. People are like, well, isn't that all Florida is? And I say, well, I used to think so, you know, growing up in the Northeast. But, you know, we go to those more second-tier markets where we feel the buy-in is still really affordable. And even with a new construction in a B or A area, we can still get you cash flow off the bat. That's something that we fundamentally look for because if we can continue to do that, we put ourselves and our clients in a good position.
Now, are you guys identifying individual lots that you're building on, or are they like a neighborhood that you're converting into build to rent? What does the model look like?
Great question. I love scattered lots. So right now we have over 5,000 lots in Florida, and we love scattered lots. So scattered lots means an existing neighborhood, you know, probably built in the 60s and 70s. Great ratios of homeowners to renters. We go in and buy up all the vacant lots in there, and we'll build single-family homes and duplexes. They do really well, value really well, high demand, safe areas. We'd walk through there 10 o'clock at night, no problem. We'll also buy entire, you know, land tracts. a big piece of land. And, one thing I tell people too is this isn't a quick flip. I did a lot of fix and flips over the years, which are great. And that was how I got started. But, these bigger pieces of land sound really cool, but it could take 2 years to get these things going. That is a long time. So what we'll do is, Michael, we'll take on whole communities. But let's say like we had one in Jacksonville, it was 800 lots. It was a defunct golf course. We divided into 800 lots. We sold off 650 of the lots to national home builders because they're going to build their nice houses there. And then scattered within, we kept 150 lots ourselves to build our build-to-rent product. So we sometimes for larger buyers will build out a whole community, like a whole quad community or even a whole community of single-family homes they want to own and rent the whole thing. But for our individual investors, we found, especially for single-family and duplexes, we'd rather get them in established neighborhoods that have a mixture of homeowners and renters. We think that's the best for them. So we kind of ride between those two choices.
I like that.
Jim, I think you just alluded to it a little bit there, but your buyer pool, it sounds like it's a mix of everything from one individual to institutional sized buyers. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have over 950 individual investors, and we work with a couple of the larger hedge funds. We work with Haven Realty, which is JP Morgan's group. We've worked with Americans Home for Rent, Invitation Homes. All these guys are kind of the big ones, and some family offices. But I'd still say our bread and butter is the individual investors. We really enjoy that. That's what, I was and my partner Chris and his father were, and so we build a lot of successful smaller portfolios. Our average, client who's really found success, they own between 3 and 10 properties, and they've been into them for a few years now, so they're really producing at a great cash flow. They're at a lower LTV. And that's still our bread and butter. And some of them are in real estate. We have a lot of realtors or mortgage people who are in markets where the numbers just don't work. And so they'll come to us. We also have a number of business owners, professionals, doctors, dentists that, again, they want exposure to real estate, but they want someone else to do the homework, the figuring out, and, be able to put guardrails around their time.
And you're in Florida only?
Only in Florida, but the plan is over the next 2 years with Sumitomo, our parent company. There's already some expansion plans. We'll go into Texas and Tennessee, which are 2 states we like. As you had said, is there something you avoid, Andrew? And I got to it a little bit. Like we avoid the biggest markets in Florida, not because we don't like them. We just don't find that off the bat cash flow, and we feel like they're a little more priced up. What we do is we also look for landlord-friendly states. And that's something I really encourage to all your listeners. Things have changed over the last 5 years, very different than I had seen the last 25 years. You got to go to a state that allows you to collect rent and doesn't penalize you for doing it. So I like Florida, I like Tennessee, I like Texas because their landlord laws are fair, and that's important if you're depending on cash flow, from renting property. Yeah.
That's funny you say that. So I'm a real estate attorney as part of my world, and so right around COVID, we started getting all these investors from the Northeast in New Jersey and New York, and that was their comment. They're like, we got to get out of these states. It's impossible to get anything done. We're coming into Florida full speed. So it's interesting to watch.
No, and as from the legal side, you see that, and from the friend side, I know you guys said you're in Tampa. I have a good friend who, him and his wife, relocated to Tampa in the pandemic. They had built up a very good portfolio in upstate New York that they worked years on, and it was producing good money, probably 17, 20 grand a month. It went from that to losing them 10 to 12 a month. And we're not talking for 2 months, we're talking 14, 16 months. That's detrimental. And for the smaller, our job always, I'm sure as you guys educate with our clients, is to take risk off the table. So for example, we were doing some things in Georgia. We liked Atlanta, we liked the growth patterns. We've completely pulled out. We've sold our rental portfolio there. We've sold our development projects we still had because the landlord laws changed so much in COVID. We can't in good conscience continue to build there and rent there for ourselves or our clients.
So are you guys keeping a good portion of these, or is most of the model?
Some properties within our, within every project that we do. And then we manage probably 95% of what we build.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because like you said, doctors, dentists, etc., that are interested in getting in the game but just don't have the time or bandwidth to manage everything themselves. So one other thing, just kind of shifting gears a little bit, but when we started this, the Legacy Wealth Code, to us was teaching people how to buy real estate, build a long-term wealth, and ultimately leave a legacy that's meaningful. It looks like you've started 18 Summers. All these interview topics that you sent over to us all have a pretty common theme that, you share a fairly common interest with us, which is invest in real estate, but do things from a time perspective that mean the most to you. So talk a little bit about this 18 Summers.
My wife and I started it 10 years ago as more of a passion project. And we wrote a book that we didn't even want to write, but long and behold, it became a #1 bestseller, Wall Street Journal bestseller. And it just shows that real estate investors, entrepreneurs, they want to be successful in business, but they also want to be successful at home. And in the rush up that investor mountain, we can all get wrapped up in best intentions, but you can miss the boat on some really important years. That was something a mentor of mine told me. He said, they'll still be your kids after 18 years, but I'm telling you, it's different. He's like, make the most of those 18 summers. They'll want to come back for more. You'll never regret it. You'll be there in the most important times of their life. And so it really changed the way I looked at things many years ago. And so we work with lots of different investment groups, entrepreneur groups, my wife and I both, and just say, how do we be successful in business and successful at home? And that is the theme of 18 Summers. And we've been able to write some pretty neat books and have some classes, workshops, which we didn't realize was so needed until we started doing it. But there's a lot of ways that the three of us can figure out how to better our business. There's very few things out there for investors and entrepreneurs clearly laid out of how do you be a successful entrepreneur and keep your marriage and family life strong. Very few things to that exact niche.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. This whole thing started, now you said workshops and masterminds. Is that something that people can sign up and be a part of? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, there's different ones people can sign up for. A lot of times individual investor groups or entrepreneur groups will hire me to come in and speak or facilitate a workshop. So it's, again, more of a side project. I don't like to be on the road much anymore. Again, I have 5 children, so I like adventure. We work right now. I'm in our house in Costa Rica. I work here 3 months out of the year, but I like to be with my family. So I do go out on the road for my family consulting talks, but not as much as I used to, because I'm a homebody now. I'm not afraid to say it. I don't need that road adventure. Nearing down on 50, I'm like, nah, I'm good. I want to be home.
How old are your kids, Jim?
I range 2 to 20, so we got the game.
All right. You do, yeah. That keeps you busy.
It sure does. Either busy or insane or both. We're not sure.
So your experience, I think, is pretty broad. You started with doing those bulk rehabs or bulk foreclosures rather. Do you see any of that kind of stuff on the horizon for the average investor looking at things? Is there anything that's a red flag to you?
I have not seen anything from the people I listened to and I wish I had listened to in 06, 07. I don't see anything from the bigger points until very late in this decade. 2029, 2030, there could definitely be a correction. And that's something that you always want to look for. However, what I always tell people is I survived 2008. It wasn't easy. It was painful. I could have survived it so much easier, guys. I mean, so much easier if I had owned less of better quality with less leverage. It's that simple. There's never been a time in a 7 to 8 year span, or definitely a 10-year, when it's been bad to hold. The three of us could have gone in on a single-family home together in Jacksonville, Florida in mid-2007, the worst time supposedly in the last 100 years. And within 6.5 years, we would have been above that pricing with rents up. So this is where I like holding power, because if you will just not look 6 months, but you'll look at least 5-6 years, and you have the type of property that can perform it, I don't worry about things like that anymore. My portfolio is probably at about 28-29% LTV now. So I'm not saying you have to be that low. Again, I've become an old fuddy-duddy, not very aggressive. But as you build that, if you're owning less, you're not over-leveraged, it's in good condition in solid areas, you can rent your way through, a short correction of 2-3 years. Like we saw in '08. It was only when you're in the tougher areas with deferred maintenance, because no one likes to talk about this, but guess what? Deferred maintenance always comes due at the worst possible time when you got the least amount of cash. Mm-hmm. So I like to avoid deferred maintenance in my properties. And again, it's a very simple aha. It's just, for me, it literally, I know I repeat myself, but own less, better quality, less leverage. You'll be able to power through those shorter things, but you look at any graph of like the Fed charts from the last 110 years, real estate has always continually gone up. There's dips and there's this, and we all know about my grandfather bought his house for this. If I had kept it, it'd be worth this. I believe in that. And unless our money system completely changes, I don't think that's ever changing.
Well, it's a very sophisticated model that I know that most of I would actually argue to say all of our wealthiest friends share, which is buy good properties and don't sell them.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. But the problem is you got to be willing to look past the nose of 6 months, right? We can only look out just the end of our nose, 3 to 6 months. Can I do that? And that just ruins it, Yeah. And that's also where a lot of people get into crappy properties for their first few properties, and they beat the hell out of them for 2 years. They throw up the white flag. They says, we're out. We're never doing rental property again. And I go, dang, instead of buying 2 or 3 crappy ones, what if you just bought one good one? Just one good one. Stop with the 100 house club. I believed in that shit, and it was just, and I surpassed it and doubled it, and I was miserable. So, quality over quantity. Do your numbers. Strategic where you're buying, not only landlord loss, but where's growth occurring. You can do a lot with a small portfolio.
I love that message, Jim, because one of the things that we always drive home is that, real estate isn't easy, but it's simple if you stick to your fundamentals.
Well said. Well said.
And that's so important, and it gets overlooked. And getting back to the basics and sticking with those there's so much to that. So,
absolutely.
So I'm going to put a link in the show notes for your books, and then what can we do to help you? Are you looking for more investors? What?
Yeah, we're always we bring on new investors weekly. We're at nearly 1,000 investors, and we're expanding our operation. We're very excited about the success we've had for so many people out there, and we're continuing to grow into the growth markets of Florida and then other states of good landlords like Texas and Tennessee, and we enjoy being able to buy back our people's time. That they don't have to do all the grunt work that the three of us know can take a lot of time. So read our book, check out our website. If we can help you, great. We're not a fit for everybody, but for the people that like our principles and fundamentals, we've been able to build some real solid rental portfolios that I do believe have that ability for generational wealth.
Yeah. Now, you've had some super good points. We're beyond glad you came on. I know we had to move our last one with everything going on, but I'm glad we got this episode recorded, and I think it'll be a very valuable one for our listeners. Hopefully some people reach out to you and start that journey of investing in real estate.
Well, it's good. Either way, it's good chatting with you guys. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, you as well. Andrew, you
Absolutely.
got anything else?
I don't, Jim. Really appreciate you coming on, and as I said, great message, and kudos to you on the success of your company, and I'm excited to see where you all continue to go.
Thank you. Me too.
I am a little jealous here in Costa Rica. I'm not going to lie, but it is what it is. Carry on. Maybe next year I'll be there with you.
Didn't happen when I first came here 24 years ago, but now I'm able to spend time here. That's the power of lag right there.
Yeah.
Living everything you teach, which is one of the things you very rarely see these days. So appreciate you coming on. So, all right, guys. Well, this has been another episode of the Legacy Wealth Code podcast. Until next time, onward.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Legacy Wealth Code podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe now and never miss an episode. Until next time, onward.